Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, a psychiatrist and scholar, dedicated her life to understanding the psychological and systemic roots of racism. Her theories offer a compelling lens through which we can examine historical figures like Walter Plecker and Alice Hrdlicka, both of whom played pivotal roles in shaping racial policies in the United States. In this video, we'll explore Welsing's philosophy and see how Plecker and Hrdlicka's actions confirm her theories on race, identity, and the preservation of white supremacy. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing's philosophy centers on what she calls the Cress Theory of Color-Confrontation. According to Welsing, racism isn't simply individual prejudice, it's a systemic structure designed to uphold white supremacy, rooted in a subconscious fear of genetic annihilation. Welsing believed that people with white skin, as a global minority, are historically and psychologically driven to assert dominance over people with darker skin, whom they perceive as genetically dominant. She argued that this fear is at the core of racist institutions and policies designed to control and suppress non-white populations. Walter Plecker, head of Virginia's Bureau of Vital Statistics from 1912 to 1946, exemplifies the institutionalization of white supremacy that Welsing warned against. Plecker was instrumental in enforcing the Racial Integrity Act of 1924, which aimed to classify individuals strictly by race and prevent interracial marriage. His obsession with racial purity was motivated by a belief that mixing races would dilute the white race, undermining its dominance. This aligns perfectly with Welsing's theory that the white majority fears genetic annihilation. Plecker's policies didn't just enforce segregation, they erased indigenous identities by forcing Native Americans into the colored category. He sought to eliminate what he considered impurities in racial classifications, aiming to strengthen the white race by restricting the identities of non-white communities. In Dr. Welsing's terms, Plecker's actions confirm the idea that white supremacy will go to great lengths to erase or diminish any perceived genetic competition, using state power as a tool of control. Chapter 3. Alice Hrdlicka's Scientific Justifications for Racial Hierarchies. Alice Hrdlicka, known as the father of American physical anthropology, used science as a veil for promoting racial hierarchies. Much of Hrdlicka's work revolved around eugenics and the idea that some races were inherently inferior. He conducted physical measurements to prove that non-white populations were biologically different, and in his eyes, biologically inferior. This pseudoscientific approach to race aligns closely with Welsing's argument that white supremacy isn't just a social attitude, but a deep-seated psychological need to maintain white dominance. By pathologizing non-white populations and classifying them as less advanced or primitive, Hrdlicka contributed to the idea that white supremacy was a natural order. According to Welsing, this drive to label another non-white people stems from an anxiety about maintaining a pure racial identity, an identity seen as under constant threat. Hrdlicka's work is a stark example of how scientific institutions often served as tools to legitimize and enforce racial hierarchies. Chapter 4. Confirmation of Welsing's theories. Both Plecker and Hrdlicka's actions serve as case studies supporting Welsing's theories on the psychological roots of racism. Plecker's strict racial classifications and Hrdlicka's dehumanizing science reflect the lengths to which systems of power will go to protect and enforce white supremacy. Welsing argued that white supremacy is not only institutional but psychological, and Plecker and Hrdlicka's legacies confirm that the fear of losing control, whether over racial classifications or scientific narratives, is central to white supremacy. Conclusion, legacy, and relevance of Welsing's work. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing's theories continue to resonate because they reveal how racism is entrenched not just in laws or social norms, but in the very psyche of a society built on racial hierarchies. Walter Plecker and Alice Hrdlicka are just two examples of how this psychology manifests in both policy and science. By understanding Welsing's work, we gain insight into the historical motivations behind racial oppression, and see how these structures persist in new forms today. Her work urges us to confront these realities and to question the foundations of racial identity in America. Dr. Welsing's work encourages us to ask difficult questions, challenge accepted narratives, and seek a deeper understanding of the roots of racism. Through the legacies of people like Plecker and Hrdlicka, we see just how far white supremacy is willing to go and how crucial it is to unearth and confront these painful truths. We must confront the psychology of racism to dismantle its power. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for future content.